Memphis is indeed all that, a city rich in song and experience. And this morning, filmmaker Ralph Crowder III is here to talk about his documentary on Memphis's African-American community and his contributions to the music industry. And Ralph is recording right there. Can you show that to the camera just a second there? No, flip it over. Flip it over. Let's go ahead. Yeah, let off so Marcus can see. This is the first time I've ever done a live television interview while I was being recorded at the same time, and only you would make that happen.
Yeah, you have to document your life, so this is a part of doing that.
All right. Yeah. So tell us about this documentary. A city rich in song and experience that I got this great invitation, and what inspired you to do it?
You know, I came to Memphis for a brief trip for a PTA National Convention last year, and my experience here was twofold. I'm definitely interested in the issues of public education.
Sure.
I'm also interested in, cultural issues in urban communities. And so I made a purpose while my trip was here for one reason, to actually document my experience in Memphis. And, I was just fascinated by the flavor of Memphis, man. And it basically was rooted around the real powerful impact that the music has on the pulse of the city.
And what did you find out when you went around and talked to people and said, hey, did you know this? Did you understand? Do you realize this? Do Memphians have an appreciation for their contribution post-King civil rights, post-King assassination, and also their just generational contribution to music?
Ironically enough, I think there's more appreciation for the generational conversation in music than there is for the generational conversation as it pertains to Memphis post-civil rights era. So, although the music tradition remains, I think there's the messaging in where Memphis stands in that post-civil rights era conversation is kind of, it's not taking place like it should be, and I think that is really what Memphis can really stand up and be very proud about.
Well, we actually have a campaign here on this station, on Fox 13, about Be Proud Memphis, because we're trying to get Memphians to understand how rich their history is. You see it, I see it.
Right.
There's a debate whether or not Memphians truly see it themselves. And what did you experience when you went out filming your doc?
His truth is marching on. Welcome, Freedom Radio. This is Mother Georgiana King, better known to some as Queen Okua Marinake. I would like to carry you back to a moment in time in history. I'm standing here now at Clayborn Temple in Memphis, Tennessee, which is the historical place where all of us foot soldiers and others took part during the days of the Civil Rights Movement. I should never forget the glorious workshops that we had here, the gospel singing that we had here. My part in the marches was I was one of the marshals that helped to line up the marchers before the march. I was one of the helpers that helped to give the orientation to the marchers before the march. I was the one that was leading the march during the time after Dr. King's assassination, when his wife, Sister Coretta Scott King, returned to Memphis to lead a march. I helped to lead over 17,000 people from the corner of Linden and Hernando here at Clayborn Temple. I helped to lead down Beale Street to Main Street and to the properties between City Hall and the courthouse. I shall never forget those moments in history, even though some of my brothers and sisters have gone to be with the Lord. They're still living in my heart and in my mind. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up the King's Highway.
I want you to understand is this, that it didn't cost the nation 1 penny to integrate lunch counters. It didn't cost the nation 1 penny to guarantee the right to vote. But now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power.
The promises of freedom and justice have not been met, and it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity.
The Black Mondays came up during the time when Local 1733 was trying to fight for their rights, of which Dr. King came to Memphis during that time for the rights of the garbage strikers, because they were doing them unjust, they wasn't paying them right, and they still are not doing that. And so that's the significance of the Black Mondays, that we kept fighting to have our rights. This area behind me is where the foot soldier training took place, where they were informed to inform the marchers when we were ready to start out to line up for the marches, that they could not have any like dangling earrings on, because if a riot broke out, somebody could snatch your earring and then you would have an injured ear. No jewelry, no umbrellas, no high heel shoes, because these things could be used as a weapon. And then we would give the orientation for that, and was expecting everybody to obey, and they did, because we did have some tough marshals that was with us. After we would do the orientation, the marchers would begin to come out and line up. Back then, we would line up here, 7 abreast, 4 abreast, or whatever. Our leaders would be on the forefront line. If we were going toward the Lorraine Hotel, we would go that direction. If we were going toward City Hall and the Federal Building, we would start from this direction and we would go right up Hernando to Beale Street. But what we have to remember now is that this is holy ground. And after the marches would be over, because we could not go to the places where the Europeans would gather, we had cafes on the corner. Each one of those corners down there was a cafe. And then we would go over to the Lorraine after the marches was over. We would all gather again at the Lorraine. We would have gatherings, and we would talk about the events of the day and what we would have to do the next time that we would come out for a march. And we would gather there. And we have to remember, during that time, there was National Guards that came out. And during the time that I journeyed to Memphis, we was on the curfew. I think the curfew was 8 p.m. And they had the helicopters up, and I remember hearing the helicopters go up, and I remember seeing policemen in their car with the dogs in the car, and they billy clubs. In fact, on one event, I was shot with tear gas along with the rest of my team right up Hernando Street, headed toward Beale Street. And when we got ready to go in the march, we ran up on the police squad down there with their billy clubs and their helmets on and their tear gas. And I was even shot with tear gas, and all of us made it back to the church. Some of the people jumped in the grass. Some made it back to the church, and once I got here, there was a car here, and they laid me up on the car, and they finally got me in the church. And when everybody knew me, got in the church, and they seen that I was okay, everybody held their hands up, hooray, and they was glad. And so this is some of the part of what I was involved in the movement. One thing I do want to say is that as a marshal, we had to be very watchful, because during that time there was policemen up on the buildings. They had dogs out, but we were young and we had empowered ourselves to see that we would march until justice was done. In the case of the Black Mondays, Local 1733, they accomplished what they were trying to do. In reference to places that we go now that we could not go, everything that we did during the Civil Rights movement, it has paid off, but we are not finished yet. There's still much work to be done. A lot of people ask me, so, well, Mother King, were you afraid during that time? No, because first of all, I knew that we had God with us. And we put our lives on the line. We used our bodies as shield to protect our leaders. That it also came forth to help us to fight for the cause of which we were trying to accomplish. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up the King's Highway. What foot soldiers did and still do is we go out and we are, like in my case, I'm what is known in the movement as a mobilizer and a recruiter. That's where I'm able to recruit from small masses of people to several thousands of people, depending on what the issues are surrounding it. For example, several years ago, when we had that walk to Washington, D.C., my team, the New Exodus Marchers of the South of Housing Now, helped to lead over 240,000 people down Constitutional Avenue in Washington, D.C. We were forerunning 3 years before the Million Men March. Mm-hmm. And out of that came the 1 Million Women's March, which my teams was involved in that, and so forth. It grieves my heart to see this historical site still standing here. Some say that it is a sore eye within the community. But every time I see it, it's a part of history. I can still hear the singing. I can still see the marchers. I say Clayborn Temple must live again. This has been a moment in history with Freedom Radio. This is Mother Georgiana King, Queen Akua Marina K. Akua is sweet messenger, woman of wisdom and knowledge. Marina K is good fortune. The doctor part was bestowed upon me by someone who had also received a doctoral degree. It was bestowed upon me because of my expertise in different areas throughout Memphis, Tennessee, and throughout the country and throughout the world. To Freedom Radio audience, peace. let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up the King's Highway. This is from some of the original basin. That's history right there.